Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Welcome back to In the Maktabah. And in this series, I've got a very special guest. Somebody who, every time I've put up a post on Instagram saying who's next in the Maktabah, it's been requested. I'm happy to finally be hosting Sheikh Muhammad Tim Humble, all the way from Newcastle.
All the way from Newcastle.
All the way from Newcastle. We're going to speak about the journey, because it was an unusual one. But before we do that, just quickly introduce yourself to the audience.
So your brother Abu Abdurrahman, Muhammad Tim Humble. I became Muslim at the age of 14. Ended up going to the Islamic University of Madinah, somewhere around 20, 21 years old.
Yeah.
And graduated in 2011 and involved in the field of da'wah generally, teaching and so on. So I think that's a nice
Small,
summary. That's me, you know.
We're going to unpack that
Inshallah,
before Jamia, during, and then after, as we always do.
Inshallah.
But you had a bit of a mission just to get here today.
It was a little tricky. And subhanAllah, when you think that safar, traveling, has just been made so easy for us, that sometimes we forget the difficulties that can sometimes just come about. You know, you just I was planning for a 45-minute flight from Newcastle Airport direct to Heathrow. I've done it a lot of times. Very, very easy. Turn up an hour before, no luggage, all that. And I ended up stuck 3 hours on the tarmac at Newcastle Airport because of fog, apparently. London doesn't do well with fog. We have a lot of fog in Newcastle, a lot of rain, a lot of cold.
Yeah.
But London doesn't do so well with fog, apparently.
So you was on the plane for 3 hours?
Yeah, it
just
was.
waiting.
And it wasn't that much of a big seat either. But
yeah,
alhamdulillah, wallah, it was worth it to come down. Wallah. It's so nice. It's been such a long time we've been trying to get together to do this podcast. So I'm really, really happy that we got to do it.
Barakallahu feekum, jazakallah for actually not getting off the plane. I might have got off the plane and said, I'll cancel and reschedule another time after 3 hours of sitting down. But that's really good. You said you took your Shahada, became a Muslim at 14, right?
Yeah, that's right.
I think you've got a really cool name, by the way, Muhammad Tim Humble.
Yeah,
You must get it a lot.
Yeah, subhanAllah, people ask me sometimes, did you choose that name? And I have to say to them, you can't, declare yourself to be a humble person, but actually that's my family name going back as far back as I can trace. So,
alhamdulillah.
That is people, the
name. There's the narration, I'm not sure of the word in itself, about give your children good names, and they take a portion of their name.
The person has a portion of their name.
So inshallah, I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that you get that portion of your name, because humility, and that's part of being a Muslim, having humility.
No doubt.
Right. And there's a statement about how, learning knowledge and seeking knowledge, how it increases. It's supposed to increase a person in humility, which is why sometimes you see some people when they're getting knowledge and they're acting arrogant. It's like, really, have you really?
Yeah, subhanAllah. You didn't really get the reason why you saw the reason why. Yeah. SubhanAllah, I suppose.
So 14 in Newcastle.
In Newcastle, yes. I'd been in Newcastle since I was about 6 years old. I was born just slightly out in a town, maybe 20, 25 miles away from Newcastle, something like that.
Yeah.
And really how I became Muslim I was saying that it's something that, and I'm always getting in trouble from my kids. They always say to me that, Dad, why does the story change ever so slightly every time you tell it? And literally, it's just because it's been such a long time, and you always remember certain aspects and then maybe forget others, that there are slight variations in what I remember from it. But really what happened was I was in a pretty difficult place in my life as a young teen, going through what a lot of young teens go through, being a little bit lost, having not very good friends, and really not having a great relationship with my parents, and being in a situation where I was looking for answers. And it took some time. I think there was a lot of influences from non-Muslims who just got me interested in religion. And as time went on, I ended up in RE classes in what I'm presuming is year 9. I don't think it was year 10, but somewhere around that age. And basically, those religious education classes mentioned a little bit about Islam factually. The teacher wasn't a Muslim, but enough to get me really interested in it. And over time, it wasn't a light bulb moment where I just stood up and said, I'm going to become a Muslim. But over time, I started to think, well, I'm getting more and more inclined towards Islam, more and more sort of defensive of what Islam believes, and sort of, people would say things about Islam, and I would be, no, Islam is not like that. You don't understand Islam properly. And I kind of realized after a while that I was becoming a Muslim without realizing it. And then, at some point at the age of 14, and as far as I know, it was just before, I'm going to say it was probably about 2 or 3 months before Ramadan.
Yeah.
Something like that, because I remember Ramadan was right in the middle of the winter in that time, right in the middle of sort of, maybe it could have been December, January, something like that kind of time. And I remember it wasn't Ramadan when I became Muslim, but it wasn't very long. So I possibly became Muslim, maybe perhaps it was an October kind of time, something like that. And then Ramadan came along. So I ended up making the decision to accept Islam. And at the age of 14, well, alhamdulillah.
Amazing. And then you did your first Ramadan not long after, I guess.
First Ramadan. I just think that there's so much more information available to new Muslims today than there was at that time.
Yeah.
We had internet, we did search things, but it's just there was not that wealth of information. And Newcastle is in terms of Muslims, a very small city with a reasonably small Muslim population. There wasn't really a teacher figure that I could go to. There were some more senior, sort of more elderly people who could have maybe helped me a little bit to understand, but they themselves weren't teachers, and they didn't really know how to teach. And neither did my friends. They were just regular teenagers doing things that teenagers do. So I was kind of a little bit lost for quite a long time about how to practice the religion. What did I want to be? What is Islam all about? I knew the concepts, but I think it took me probably took me the better part of 4 years, maybe even 4.5 years before I really started to practice Islam wholeheartedly, instead of just being sort of like little bits here and there, and fasting Ramadan, and so it took some time to get into it.
Do you know what? I've got so many questions from that I can ask you.
Allah bless you.
Let me ask you a couple of questions. Maybe you can deal with the ones however the order it comes in. One of them would be, as a 14-year-old that's lost, looking at many of the youth today, Muslim youth though, that are 14, 15, 16, going through what teenagers go through, what advice would you give them? That's one question. Second one is the topic of so much more information available for people that want, for new Muslims. Where would they kind of go to find that information? That's another one, because we discussed it a few times about having a centralized place online with courses and information, which is solid and sound, but also at the right level for the new Muslim. Not too much, not too little. Trying to get that balance. So that's the second question. What would you say to a new Muslim as well for their advice? And the third one, I'm going to drop it because otherwise it's going to go. The third one, this one is Newcastle. I've been there once. We've got the Abu Tayyib's up there.
Yes, he is.
With what's it, IDC?
Yeah,
or
IDC Northeast.
IDC Northeast, And I see him sometimes. He comes down to London. We go out for dinner, have a chat, catch up. Good practice. What's going on? Lovely brother. Was he around at that time?
His brother was around at that time.
Very nice lad, or whatever word it is you use up in Newcastle.
So I didn't know them as well until after I become. I don't remember meeting them before I became Muslim, but after I became Muslim, Abu Tayyib's brother Suhail used to invite us to come and pray in the masjid, in the musalla at school. We were in the same high school together. And that had a really big impact. Wallahi, if I were to credit someone after Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that really helped me to get into practicing Islam, those brothers made a big impact, a huge impact. And especially when I got towards 18, 19 and to start practicing the religion properly, I think they had the biggest impact out of anybody. Huge impact, wallahi.
Yeah, may Allah reward them. They're still doing the same work.
Yeah,
Street
dawah,
dawah, new Muslims. It's been like, how many years is it? 25 years, or longer?
So to answer your questions, I think with regard to new Muslims, I think it's really important for Muslims to understand that teaching a new Muslim is really something that does have a certain amount of specialized skill in it. And I think not every Muslim is a good teacher generally, but not every Muslim teacher knows even how to teach new Muslims. I think to teach new Muslims, you need to have experience of working with them or to have been a new Muslim yourself. Because I think to understand the difficulties new Muslims face, there's a huge issue of priorities. What do we put first? Because as we know, let's say an adult accepting Islam has to, in theory, practice everything straight away as much as they possibly can. What do you teach them first, and how do you ease them into the religion without compromising in their practicing of the religion? The issues of Arabic language, we tend, when we teach as teachers who are accustomed to teaching Muslims all the time, we tend to use lots of Arabic words. We tend to speak in a way that people, you presume a certain level of understanding, and a new Muslim comes in and even the takbir, Allahu Akbar, might be something that they don't understand. So what I have done recently is I've tried to contribute to that, although I think at the moment we don't have a centralized place that I would say for every single person, but we do have some good resources. And in terms of, I have an institute that I work with in Dubai called Islamic Information Center. It's part of Jam'iyyat Dar al-Bir, which is one of the big charity organizations in Dubai. And they have a new Muslim portal. It's completely free. A person can just type in Islamic Information Center Academy, and they should get New Muslim Level 1, New Muslim Level 2, and some other things. Inshallah, Al-Madrasatul Umariyya, which I'm working with right now, AMAU, are also planning to launch a New Muslim portal as well. And there's many other institutes that have these. But I would just say to a new Muslim that try to find something that is made for new Muslims. Especially if you are feeling new to Islam. Whereas some new Muslims might come into Islam with having studied it for a year or 2 years, and they actually might be really comfortable with Islam and terminology and practicing. But I think that for someone who's feeling like very new to it all, you really need something that's made for new Muslims. And reliable, of course, reliable sources. It's really important, because if at that early age, it's they're like a little baby, you know, like you're literally going to grow up with that first teacher that you have, and that person's going to sort of ease you into the religion, and the principles they give you and their approach, the methodology they have, it's going to affect so much of the way that person grows and develops in Islam. So that's, I think, really important for the new Muslims.
That's beautiful. So if we're going to summarize that, you would say, for example, the importance of it being someone that's a new Muslim themselves, already been converted, so they can,
or someone who has lots of experience dealing with new Muslims,
prioritizing the subject, the knowledge, not using too much Islamic terminology because they're new, and having the reliable resources, basically. And you mentioned a couple of them that you can go to.
Yeah, definitely.
The
other question was with regard to advice for young Muslims going through those early teenage years. I think my first piece of advice to them, honestly, would be to appreciate the blessing you have. Because I think it's fair to say that unless a person has accepted Islam and known Jahiliyyah, known what it is like not to be a Muslim, it's really hard to appreciate the blessing of Islam. It's not impossible. It's really, really hard for a person to appreciate just what a blessing it is. And I think that once you appreciate the value of what you have, you want to hold on to it. And I think the reason that a lot of young Muslim teens are struggling with their religion is maybe to begin with not realizing what that religion can give you. And a lot of the time, that's because they have a wrong idea of what Islam is to begin with. It could be affected by culture, affected by way Muslims have treated them. Muslims have treated them badly. They've had bad experiences, maybe at home with parents, maybe with the wider community or in the masjid or whatever. And that has led a person just to have the wrong idea of what Islam is. And we have to remember, Islam is perfect, 100% perfect. And it's our implementation and our practicing where the taqsir and the falling short and the mistakes and the flaws come in. So I would say to them, appreciate what you have, realize what Islam really is, go study it for yourself, learn it for yourself. And you'll find that even in the most difficult of situations, and even if we're dealing with these nawazil, these brand new issues that people have never dealt with before, you actually find that Islam has absolutely everything a person would need. And I think if a person asks me, can you show that to me, prove it to me, I would just say the number of young people accepting Islam. You look at the number of young teens, brothers, sisters accepting Islam. They're accepting Islam because there's something in that religion. And I just want those young people, those born into Islam, to realize the value of it and then go and look for it. And if they do go and look for it, they're going to find everything that they need to get them through, no matter what situation they're going through in their life.
Yeah. Well, Ramadan is, inshallah, next week. Inshallah, may Allah give us life long enough to see it and to benefit from it, you know, and to be engaged in ibadah, tilawat al-Quran and the like. Someone becomes Muslim today, what advice would you give them? Because they're facing Ramadan, they'll be fasting in a week's time.
Yeah, so I would say, to begin with, the way that I always deal with new Muslims is to say, look, the first thing that we want you to do is just to take a small amount of time, even if it's an hour or 2 hours, just to go over the most basic understanding of what Islam is. And the reason why I say that before anything else is there's certain things in understanding what Islam is that are conditions for every other act of worship you're going to do after that.
Yeah.
So to know that the religion is about being sincere to Allah, to know it's about worshipping Allah alone, to understand the importance of following the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. These are things that I think it's worth taking a very short amount of time, an hour, a couple of hours, to get a grounding in before even thinking about any other acts of worship that are going to come after that. After that, it's all about priorities. Now, if someone's accepting Islam just a couple of days before Ramadan, there's no doubt that, you know, a quick idea, summary of what fasting is, that's going to be important for them. But what we generally also give priority to is the prayer and what a person needs to be able to pray.
Yeah.
So what I tend to do with any new Muslim, if someone said, right, you've got 4 hours, half a day with a new Muslim, and it's 2 days before Ramadan, I would say, give me an hour to tell you what Islam is all about. Give me a couple of hours to teach you about the most basic ideas of the prayer, the times for it, the basic movements of the prayer, the basic getting ready for the prayer, and then give me an hour to tell you about the basics of fasting. And I think then a person, I have to understand, Allah doesn't burden a person with what they can't bear.
Yeah.
Well, that's a principle we have in Islam. لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها. Allah doesn't burden a person except with what they can manage. So for a person to understand, there's going to be lots of things you're going to miss, and there's going to be lots of things you have to learn. But as long as you're doing your best to learn as much as you can and practice as much as you can, you're actually going to be just fine, inshallah ta'ala.
Not to worry too much about it. Do you remember I remember when I first became a Muslim and praying and in the masjid and praying while I'm looking at the person next to me, how he's doing it, and kind of like, it was just fully kind of looking and trying to watch everyone and watch the moves and follow the moves. So being in the masjid obviously is going to help, because you're going to learn through practice, isn't it? It's one of those things that you do it, the more you do it, you know, you're going to learn it that way.
And I think there's some really, really good YouTube videos, some really good courses that are there just showing people how to pray that really help. Because the big challenge, I think, for new Muslims is sometimes I might meet a new Muslim for 5 minutes. I might be walking out of the train station or something, and someone just comes up to me and says, you know, I accepted Islam. And what do you give them inside of a minute or 2 minutes that person can actually, that you can feel confident? You don't know which masjid they go to or where they're going or where they live. Sometimes a person says, I'm just on my way out of the city. So I think to be able to give someone, you know, something simple that they can say, look, here's an online course, start there, find your local masjid, then let's, you know, step by step and stay in touch, and you try and work with them like that.
That's really important, really, really important. So 14, by the time you're 18, you're kind of fully in now.
Yeah, I think between 18 and 19, I started to take the religion a lot more seriously. I started to have less times where I would sort of switch off and things like that, and was a lot more committed to it. And then, I remember, and I think this might even be Abdul Tayyib, we might have to credit Abdul Tayyib with saying to me that you know, would you not want to study Islam? Yeah. And wouldn't
sounds
you
like
want,
him? Sounds like something he would say as well. Anyway.
Wouldn't you want to study Islam? Wouldn't you want to go somewhere, go abroad, and actually study Islam formally and learn the religion? And this to me was just, I mean, if someone said literally go in that minute, you know, without saying goodbye to anyone, I would have been ready to go, because of what I went through between 14 and 18. Yeah. And just been really feeling lost by things that we maybe now have some reasonably good material on, things like the madahib, which madhab should you be, things like the different groups and sects and what are they all about, the firaq and al-iftiraq and all the Muslims breaking up into different groups, and what is that all about? And the idea of needing to ask people for everything. I mean, as a new Muslim, you're literally asking, you're at the extreme of taqleed. You're at the stage where you're literally asking every single individual issue. You're asking, can I do this? Can I do that? And that left me in a situation where I was just craving to have even a little bit of an ability to actually sort all that out in my head.
Yeah.
So when the brothers suggested to me, look, you might like to go abroad and there might be an opportunity. I hadn't heard of Madinah University, as far as I recall. I hadn't heard of it up to there. Someone said, look, you could go. And I probably remember saying something like, but, financially, it's not going to be that easy, going abroad. And they kind of said, look, they kind of give you a scholarship. They look after you. And I think my next question was, well, how can I apply?
Yeah.
And that's a question lots of people have. And it certainly at that time, it wasn't that easy to get answers either. There was a vague idea that you might need to go somewhere, you might need to do an interview, you might have to wait for some shuyukh to turn up,
over.
You might have to wait for an application form that's completely in Arabic, you have absolutely no idea how to fill it in. You might need some qualifications, but we're not entirely sure which ones. And it was very vague. It was a bit vague at that time. And that's why when I went, one of the first things I really wanted to do is to try and help people in that as well. So I made a little blog and just tried to help people. I think now there's much better resources, but trying to help people look, what do you actually need to apply, and what are some of the criteria that they have, and what's the whole thing about. And I was actually blessed. I actually got a phone call. I was probably, I don't remember, it must have been 19 going 20, and I got a phone call saying, would you like to go to Hajj? And it's a phone call out of the blue. So a brother phoned me up, one of the Tullab al-Ilm, and said, would you like to go to Hajj? And I said, I'd love to go to Hajj, but I can't afford to go to Hajj. He said, would you like to go to Hajj for free? And I said, yeah, I would love to go to Hajj for free. And then once he'd organized that through some of the free Hajj for new Muslims and things like that went on, the first thing I thought about is, how can I get in? How can I go to Medina University? And so the whole Hajj, I was planning that when I get to Medina, I'm gonna try and go and try and submit documents and things like that. Still had not a lot of, half the documents missing, the form not really sure if we filled it in properly, but Allah made it easy, and there was some brothers who really helped out a lot with the whole process. And to be honest, when I did the interview, I never thought I would get accepted. I had no idea. I really didn't. I thought, I was missing a reference. I was missing some documentation. Everything was a bit like maybe, the interview was all right, but it wasn't amazing. And I just thought that, I tried my best, alhamdulillah. I went home. I decided to get married. I just completely ignored all of the, until 6 months later when they said, oh, you got accepted. And I was shocked, to be honest.
Amazing. I got loads of questions in my head now.
Go for it.
Okay, let's do this one. Hajj. So that was year 2001.
That was 2003.
2003.
Yeah, that was 2003.
Okay, so tell me about how that experience was for you, because you're Hajj, new Muslim.
It was amazing. It was amazing. It was before the changes in the Hajj, which made the Hajj a little bit safer and easier. It was still a time when it was a little bit... at least it felt to me like it was a little. It was not. I mean, after that, I went as a Hajj guide for many years, and Hajj just became a lot. I don't think it became easier. It became a lot safer and a lot more organized. So that was still at the time of the Jamarat and everyone, rushing in and all that. I was still a very new Muslim at that time, and I think, to be honest, it was the grace of Allah and then the help of. A couple of brothers who went with me, and I feel like I was kind of just following them around. Okay, what do I do now? What's the next step?
But a big blessing, nevertheless.
Huge blessing.
For Hajj,
huge blessing.
21, that fifth pillar of Islam.
I don't know. I feel like you don't. Maybe even the first time you don't even. You can't even process it. So much is going on, and I'm just kind of thinking about. Am I doing this right? Am I in the right place? Is it? And it was overwhelming, to be honest. And it was probably the next Hajj that I did where I actually opened my eyes and looked around and said, okay, where are we now? And what's what do we do here? And it was really because I was I'd probably only been properly practicing a little bit over a year, probably something like that. So it was a little bit tricky.
And the application, it was, what advice would you give to students that are thinking of going or applying now, considering it's different then? Obviously, alhamdulillah, you didn't expect to get accepted, right?
So it's funny, that one, I might surprise you with that advice. I would advise them that don't make Medina the sort of line between whether you study or you don't study.
Yeah.
I think that's a really, really wrong mindset, and that mindset it causes huge problems for people. I think the first problem is you don't start studying before you go, and so you go there with as close to zero knowledge about anything as possible because you're not in the mindset of studying before. You don't take advantage of what's available locally, and it's obviously a huge shock to actually go there without being prepared for study. But also, when you go there, if you're in the mentality that the university is going to give me everything, you inevitably end up graduating disappointed and feeling like I didn't get what I was supposed to get.
Yeah.
So I would say to people that if you want to go and study abroad, whether it's Medina or anywhere else, first of all, get into the mentality of being a student of knowledge and what that means and what the pathway to it is and what the steps are. Take a book like Ta'zeem al-Ilm by Sheikh Saleh al-Usaymi or Hilyat Talib al-Ilm by Sheikh Bakr Abu Zayd, or both of them if you can, and really understand what does it mean to be a student. And then what you realize is that mentality will go with you wherever you are in the world, inshallah. And it doesn't matter whether you end up in Medina or you end up in another city or you end up studying from scholars in your own time, or you end up, it doesn't matter what happens, because ultimately if you have the mentality of being a student, and that's, that you'll be that person wherever you are in the world. Whereas if you have the idea that when I put my feet in Medina, I'll be a talib ilm, and then I think that's going to lead to a lot of problems. It certainly did for me, because that was the idea I had. Yeah. And I was shocked when some of the mashaykh, I asked, scholars for references, and one of them said to me, no. And I was like, Sheikh, what do you mean no? I mean, I'm a revert, you can't say no. And he said, no. He said, because you're not prepared. You're not thinking about it the right way. You're not making an effort to study here. You're not taking advantage of the resources that are here. You have this idea that you're just going to turn up there and be a really good student, and it doesn't work like that. Yeah. And I was really upset when he gave me that advice. I felt like he was being really harsh with me, and in the end, Allah bless him, he gave me a tazkiyah while when literally I phoned him and said, through a brother translation, and said, look, Sheikh, I'm here in Medina looking at the university. Sheikh,
I'm serious, I mean it, man, come on.
And he did,
yeah.
He did, but I really came to appreciate the value of his advice later on. And I realized that, to be honest, out of everyone that advised me, his advice was actually the closest to the truth.
Yeah.
If you want to go there, start studying here. Yeah. And honestly, whether you go or you don't, there are lots and lots of opportunities to seek knowledge. But that methodology and way of seeking knowledge, if you don't have it and you don't have a roadmap for seeking knowledge, to be honest, you're going to waste a vast amount of it. I mean, you can waste a decade without even in the blink of an eye.
Yeah.
Easy.
That's solid advice. I think we're going to review how we give tazkiyahs here as well.
No, don't be hard. Don't be harsh on the brothers.
I like that advice. I think that's really important. I mean, I think there's a lot of students that come here. Obviously, they can study on al-Madrasa al-Umariya. They can start a process, get used to it. They can do it at the college.
Yeah,
but it is really important. I mean, if they haven't been studying, then what makes you think they're going to benefit from their time over there as well? I think
also, if you think about when a person goes to study from the major scholars of our time, that person, the level they go in at is going to have a massive effect on how far they can progress and the amount that they benefit from that sheikh. And I think going to Medina with very little means that there's a certain limit to how far you can actually go. Yeah. And I'm always amazed at brothers who went with very little and actually graduated with a lot. Wallah, that is an achievement. They worked extremely hard. But otherwise, it would be a lot better to go with a good, strong foundation. And one of the things that I was really impacted me in the Jamia was to see students from other countries who did that. We saw students from Yemen, students from Nigeria, students from Pakistan, students coming with having studied Islam for 10 years solid. Even if it's an online institute, even if it is, you know, with someone who's not necessarily one of, you know, a major scholar of this ummah, you're studying from a da'iya, a talib ilm, but those people, that 10 years or 5 to 10 years they went into Medina and they just were so far ahead of everybody else. And they were taking benefits from the scholars that we were not even able to understand where they were taking it from, because the base level was so much higher. And I think we're really blessed, to be honest. Now there's so many institutes, reliable institutes available where people can study. There's no excuse. There's online, there's in person, there's in almost, if not in your city, then within reasonably easy reach of you, there's going to be an institute where you can get the basics, and that's going to help, you know, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, raise the standard of the students. And we're seeing that, alhamdulillah. We are seeing, generally speaking,
definitely,
the standard of the students going into the university and coming out,
it's a lot higher.
It's very, very
Definitely,
good.
definitely.
I'm much happier.
And the digital age, there's not, even if it's not in your city, you've got it online. You've got the online institutes. You've got online, loads of teachers that are teaching online. There's a lot going on. 2 other questions pertaining to, I guess, your Hajj and going to the Jamia. Your parents, what do they think? Here's 14-year-old Mr. Humble deciding to become a Muslim, big decision. And then at 18, saying, well, I'm going to go to Medina as well and applying and going on Hajj. And then after that, even getting married at such a young age.
Yeah, so getting married was the tricky one.
Yeah.
The university, I actually managed to kind of sell it to my parents by actually just telling them that it's a very prestigious, one of the few Islamic universities in the world that has worldwide recognition for it.
Yeah.
And it's a great opportunity. My mom said, go for it.
Yeah.
Because for her, I'd left my A-levels midway through. I'd done some and not others, and I'd left midway through because I just wasn't enjoying high school. And I think also the desire to practice as well. I just wasn't, although I moved high school from a high school that wasn't very good for me to a one that was much, much better for me.
Yeah.
And I really kept myself to myself. But in the end, I left midway through, and I think my parents wanted me to continue my education. So me saying, you know what it is, I'm actually going to go to university, my mom was actually really happy about that. So no problems at all. And not also particularly where, in fact, my mom sometimes, I think the way she thinks about it and the way she says to me now is sometimes that, you know, you being in a Muslim country, I really do recognize that it really is better for you and safer for you. And, you know, I'm more comfortable with you being in a Muslim country than worrying about what you're getting up to here in the UK and you know, how things are going. So she was quite happy with that. Getting married was a whole different story. Yeah, she knew, I mean, she understood. I explained to her why, as Muslims, we get married, if you like, first.
Yeah.
So why does marriage come before all of, you know, the whole idea of a relationship and everything like that? And my mom understood that. She wasn't a particularly sort of devout Christian in the sense of, I'd probably get in trouble for saying that, but she wasn't someone who went to church every week or had a Bible in the house or something like that. But she came from a background of a family who had that at some point. And so she did understand. She actually said, yeah, I do understand. But that was tough. That was much harder. At least it feels like it was a lot harder than telling her that I became Muslim.
I mean, is it partly to do with the age as well? Because you were also young. Because even Muslims, for example, if they go to their parents, oh, mum, you know, we have this issue. You know, obviously, as much as I do. They want to get married. They're 19. Their parents are like, no, you're too young. The boy wants to get, the girls especially, the boy wants to get married, he's 20 because he wants to keep it halal. But his mum's like, you're too young.
Yeah.
Was that a similar reason with your mum as well? And what advice would you give to the Muslims that are that age and are facing that with their parents? How can they navigate that?
So I think with my mum, I'm not sure if it was age as much as the idea of marriage being such a huge commitment in this kind of like, in this the non-Muslim culture here. The idea that, like, yeah, I could have said I was moving in with someone and my mum wouldn't have batted an eyelid.
Yeah.
You know, but to say marriage, like marriage,
Commitment.
like it's just a purely cultural thing, that marriage is what you do when you're 35. Marriage is not what you like. And this issue of, you know, you're getting married early, you know, this issue of you're going to get divorced. And, you know, like you're going to like end up ruining someone's life. And like, it's purely cultural. I don't think she ever said age, but I think for a lot of non-Muslims, marriage is a really kind of, you know, very deep, sacrosanct kind of commitment, you know, that people make. And it has some degree of like sanctity to it, to them still, even if it's only from a cultural sort of perspective.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that was the difficulty, and then you know, maybe worrying about starting a family and all those kind of things, and you're a bit young for that and whatever. But I think the most important thing for young people is actually to talk to your parents. I think fighting your parents, it doesn't work. Even if we say that a person has a right, whether male or female, they have a right to, let's say, respectfully challenge their parents on the issue of them getting married, especially if getting married, if they feel that they're in danger of falling into haram. Obedience to Allah takes precedence over obedience to everybody else, regardless of how high the issue of the parents is. But at the same time, practically, it just doesn't work clashing with your parents. It's so much better to put all of that effort into actually talking to them and explaining to them. And if necessary, you might have to push a little bit. You might have to get somebody else involved to talk to them, to help them to understand. And ultimately, if it is an issue of falling into haram, that's a red line for us as Muslims. We can't put anything ahead of obedience to Allah. But I just think for a lot of people, there's a long road before then where you can make a lot of good decisions about connecting with your parents and talking to them. And, you know, even getting, for example, a person of religious knowledge who your parents respect, to go and talk to your parents and actually explain to them, getting a family friend to go and talk to your parents. And being patient with them, you know, a lot of people, the problem is the first time their parents are like, no. So straight away, you know, it's like, oh, my parents are against me. And I, of course, a little bit of Islamic knowledge, I know that I can disobey them in this because they've gone against me, and then people start straight away. It's like, where's the judiciary board? And I need a new wali. And, you know, it's not the way that Islam wants us to behave. Aside from that issue of not falling into haram, but this issue of just clashing with the parents and not being patient with them, not trying to help them to understand, not making an effort. And I mean, parents make such a huge effort. And it pains me to think that a father raises his daughter for, let's say, 18, 19, 20 years, and he's patient with her, and he literally gives her everything. And then for her to go and, you know, want to swap out the wali the first time he says no, that for me is just completely against what Islam came with. And she needs to try to find a way around that without taking, aside from the fact that the haram is not an option. So it's a tricky one.
Yeah. So you've gone back from the Jamia after applying, not having no hope whatsoever that you're going to be accepted, not thinking, well, I'm a white revert, so they have to accept me because I'm special type. Did you go there with that? Did you have any of that?
I didn't have any idea what they might think about in terms of criteria. And I think working with the university later on in the administration, actually for a while, I actually worked in the department that deals with accepting students. I was like sort of supporting them with translations and things like that, and preparing some of their documentation and whatever. I kind of realized the advantage of the advantage of being a white revert that came later on.
Okay, you've got inside knowledge. I'm going to pause you for a minute. Give them tips on what it is that helps people get accepted, apart from being a white revert.
So apart from being a white revert, I think the first thing is, if we say, first of all, no doubt the university gives precedence to people being a revert. There's no doubt about that. But aside from that, they also look at the locality. Let's not say the city, but let's just say the region you're from. So, for example, being from the southeast of England, there's a lot of people applying from there. So there's going to be a lot more, a lot more examination of and a lot more competition versus someone who maybe is applying from, say, like, for example, Newcastle, the northeast of England, and there's relatively few people applying from there. So straight away, they're looking at you and thinking, okay, your region really doesn't have a lot of people from it. So that's one thing. The third thing people are looking at your Western, worldly education, your GCSE grades, A-level grades, perhaps. They're not looking much beyond that. They don't really look at degrees and things like that, but definitely looking at your GCSEs and or A-levels. If you've shown that you're a strong student, generally, you're more likely to get accepted. And they are looking at in Islamic studies, it's funny because they're not looking at your Islamic knowledge per se, but definitely competency in the Quran. So if you could say you've memorized, let's say, more than a juz of the Quran, and you can read it very, very competently, that will help a lot. And then looking at tazkiyat, the issue with references is that because so many, the same people give out references. I mean, I can tell you what it's like working there. You end up with the 30th application with the same, literally photocopied reference.
Yeah, word for word.
I would say if you want to make your application stand out, try and get a reference from someone who really knows you. Having a famous reference is really good. Yeah, having someone, and unfortunately, generally the du'at in the West, none of us are, in terms of Medina University, quote unquote, famous for that. Like, they look at you like, Muhammad Tim, someone who graduated once from us. I've heard about him.
Did you ever see a reference from me for anyone? Just on the side note, or
I don't recall off the top of my head.
I don't think I was writing them then.
I don't recall off the top of my head, but that's not. It's more like that they would look at. See, for example, if I was to give someone a reference, that would help them if the person reviewing the application knows me. Yeah. So they're like, oh, Muhammad Abdulrahman, okay, his references are, but it wouldn't, it would be just generic. It wouldn't really add a lot of value to someone if they're looking at it and it's like, okay, Muhammad Tim once graduated from the university, okay, fine. Yeah. But someone well known, but what really helps them is, even if they don't know who I am, but I know the person I'm writing a reference for, it helps a lot, because you're saying that this person has been with me for 5 years, attended all my classes, he's memorized this and this and this. And they don't, on the application form, they don't ask you a lot about what you've achieved, but the tazkiyah is a chance to actually show what you've achieved. He's memorized this, and he's attended this dars, and he's been visiting the mashaykh, and that kind of thing. Even if they don't know who I am, they might know by sort of position, like, okay, imam of a masjid, da'iyah, graduate. But to see they know the person, that makes a difference, because that stands out now. It's like, instead of the photocopied reference, of the same one over and over and over again. Like, there's some prolific reference writers, and some people have written in a year, they could write 50.
Whoa.
And we could get 50 references, and they're all
same
one, except for the person's name and maybe date of birth. It's exactly the same. Yeah. And that, it counts. It's like tick, but it doesn't necessarily make you stand out.
Yeah. Thanks for that. That's really good. Important information.
Of course, that's all not entirely up to date in the sense that time has passed. Yeah. But those are generally the things that people are looking at.
I haven't seen it online myself, but the new system, you put in an application and it goes to all of the universities. Is that how it works now? And then, so it's a lot more centralized. There's a lot. It's like an ACAS system and stuff like that. So there's
definitely, but I would presume that the same fundamentals still generally apply. Yeah. Obviously, interviews are amazing if you can get one. If you can get one online these days, they might sometimes do, sometimes don't. But ultimately, that's what they're looking for. Yeah. Good grades. You're from a place where there's not that many other students. Obviously, you can't change your ethnic background. You can't change where you're from. So those two things are, you have what you have, right? But you can look at, your grades, about your tazkiyat, how you submit it, and the amount of work you've done in terms of what you can present and what you can put forward to stand out. It's like any interview. You imagine a person is going through hundreds and hundreds of applications and just flicking through, and everyone is Zayd and Amr and everyone the same people. But to see something that that person stands out, mashallah, okay, they've done this course and this book, and they've, tazkiyah from someone who really knows them. I would say, ideally, if you could get one famous tazkiyah from someone whose name just stands out, and then one from someone who really knows you really well, that's a pretty good formula. But you also need some decent grades as well, and things like that. So it all comes together.
So you applied, you went back home and decided, I'm going to get married and start a life.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I did.
You didn't depend on your application. You thought, my life's continuing.
I just decided to continue.
Big wedding, small wedding?
Reasonably small, not huge by wedding standards. But not just in the masjid. Like we actually had a
hall and
wedding hall and things like that.
How did you? I'm assuming you didn't marry a revert like yourself.
No, actually, marriage is a whole nother set of challenges. Actually, marriage it's the exact opposite. When we're talking about Medina University, the white revert thing helps you for Medina University, but it doesn't help you at all for marriage. So that's where the opposite comes in, and you start to feel like a little bit alone and isolated, because you will get people who turn around to you and say, "Can you not find a revert sister like you?" Yeah. They're like, well, it's not that many,
of the right age.
So that was a challenge. But I actually was blessed that I actually spoke to the Imam of our masjid, and he spoke to someone who spoke to someone who spoke to someone, and I ended up getting married. And that was, alhamdulillah, became very easy for me. And my in-laws were very, very understanding and supportive and helpful, and they weren't like that at all. So, but the first few months was really hard. It was I had a lot of expectation that, not that it would be easy to get married, but that people would be more open to a revert looking to marry into their family. And I was really quite shocked at how close-minded people can be. Like that was something that I just did not expect at all. I didn't expect there to be like, you are just you're not Pakistani, you're not Bengali, you're not go through the list of Muslim nationalities. You're not the right ethnicity. And that was like, and sometimes it was subtle, and sometimes it was not subtle at all. And that was quite tough, because I kind of thought, this is going to be it's reasonably easy, and it was a bit tricky. But alhamdulillah, in the end, and my advice to people looking to get married is honestly that there is some really good websites and apps and things now which are Islamically acceptable, in the sense that profiles people share and no chatting and no pictures and all that, but just but I didn't really have that option in that time. There wasn't much around, and instead just speaking to people and reaching out to people, and maybe preparing a little bit about yourself and who you're looking to get married to, and having a one sheet of A4 that you just say, look, this is who I am, and I'm looking to get married, and it gets sent around till you find someone who matches.
What would you say to, because that was your experience as a Muslim revert, right? And it's a common experience, but even amongst born Muslims that want to marry outside of their ethnicity, which is quite common, you've obviously come across it a lot. How should they deal with it and deal with their parents? Because it's the same thing, but they're both Muslim though, but it's still a cultural issue.
There's a lot of jahiliyyah when it comes to these things. Like I think if I was to say that people's going back to the practices that came before Islam, it really shows in weddings and funerals. Those are two times when you really see people going back away from the good etiquettes and the good manners that Islam has taught them, back to that dhulm and jahl, the ignorance and oppression that came before Islam. And I think that to be honest, I would say that the first thing I would look is if someone is saying you can't marry someone because of an ethnicity or race, whatever, the first thing I would look to understand is why. And the reason I say that is there could be a certain situation where that could be justified. And I'll tell you why. And that would be if the concern is compatibility and not understanding each other. Like, for example, if I were to go to, let's say, for example, I were to go to Pakistan and get married to a sister from Pakistan, the cultural differences would be pretty huge. And what I would expect from a wife, what she would expect from a husband, what the in-laws would expect. that could create some. Now, it's not because of a difference in ethnicity; it's because of a difference in culture. And if that's the reason, then I think that deserves some thought to it. It doesn't necessarily deserve acceptance, but it deserves some thought. So, look, you realize that the culturally there's a lot of different expectations. Things in the UK that those things tend to get erased between. Like we're not that that different, but there are some families have a very, very strong like sort of culture. So I think those things are deserving of being given thought. And some of the scholars mentioned from the evidences for this is the statement of Allah Azza wa Jalla, وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ أَنْ خَلَقَ لَكُم مِّنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ أَزْوَاجًا لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهَا. That you can't find tranquility and peace and ease with someone unless you kind of understand each other.
Yeah.
But this issue where there's no problem in understanding each other, there's no problem in cultural expectations, but it's just wrong ethnicity.
Yeah.
That is where, again, I probably would have said in my earlier, years in Islam, I would have got really, really furious, and I would have said, you just need to go against them and, like burn all your bridges. And I think as I get older, I realize that as much as that ideal is a nice ideal in terms of, you stand up for what's right and you get your haqq and everything, it's also has a lot of mafasid in it, a lot of negatives. And a person honestly, again, has to go back to talking to their parents and helping them to understand and making a decision, especially for a sister, that she's going to break off from her family, because even though her family are denying her rights, even though it's jahiliyyah, and it's, it's a really sad state of affairs that the Muslims are, that there are Muslims thinking like that. But for her to leave her family and to break off from them is a huge thing. And ultimately, our religion is one of the core principles in our deen is taqdir al-masalih wal-mafasid, looking at the positive and negative consequences that come out of something. And sometimes it pains me to say that actually, and I'm someone who I don't tolerate that kind of thing, but sometimes I have to say to a person, you know what it is, it might be better for you to actually walk away from the marriage that you want and look at the marriage that your parents want with your conditions. And in other words, your parents, it has to be a Pakistani. Okay, maybe you need to look at finding a Pakistani that matches your, even though this is your haqq and even though this is completely un-Islamic behavior, but sometimes the negatives that come out of it are so huge that actually you might actually be putting someone in a worse situation than the one. And that's part of the beauty of the religion, to be honest, the mahasin of Islam, that Islam actually looks at the positive and negative consequences. But often, to be honest, often parents, when given time, when explained to them with good knowledge, with good preaching, with a maw'idah hasana, a lot of parents come round.
Yeah.
And it's not, a lot of parents, especially now, I believe it is getting better. People are, the thing that shocks me and saddens me, to be honest, is when the children revisit that upon their kids. Yeah. That is just unbelievable. I know people who, for example, Pakistani and Bengali, they wanted to marry and they fought their parents and they suffered for it so much. And finally they get married and they say to their parents, you can only marry, they say to their kids now, you can only marry a Pakistani. Like, where did that, how can you have gone through that and then revisit that same thing upon your kids? Yeah. But generally speaking, you hope that it's getting better.
It's getting better. The prejudices are less.
I hope so. You would hope so. Yeah. You would hope so. But it's still something where weddings and it's something where a lot of ignorance comes out. Even in the ceremony, the way people carry it out, a lot of jahiliyyah comes out, a lot of pre-Islamic behavior.
So, Jamia, you left your wife in the UK or brought her with you. Was she happy for you to go?
Yeah.
Was she like, how dare you apply for the Jamia? We're going to be poor for the next 6 years.
She was very, very, very
Was she supportive?
Very supportive. Extremely supportive.
Inshallah, alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. And to be honest, I think people don't necessarily realize the sacrifice that the spouses make for their husbands to be able to go and study Islam.
Yeah.
It's not a small sacrifice. It's a pretty big and life-changing set of sacrifices that they have to make. SubhanAllah, alhamdulillah, very supportive. 1 year we were apart.
Yeah.
After that, with some very dodgy kind of, paperwork, we ended up being able to bring them, and alhamdulillah, it took that. I spent a year apart, a year with some very dodgy paperwork, and then the rest of that time,
legit.
With the help of Allah, and then massive help from one of the Saudi royal family, who literally, could have, honestly, no word of a lie, could have deported me, for that mukhalafa that I did, that dodgy paperwork, but instead saw a student who wanted to do something and wanted to learn the religion, and really went out on a limb, to be honest, and stuck up for me, and ended up getting me a visa for the family. So legit after that for the remaining 4.5, 5 years.
Amazing. So you almost got kicked out because did you get stopped and caught, or did you hand yourself in?
I kind of handed myself in,
Okay.
To a certain extent. I applied for my wife to go. I got kind of nervous about it. Applied for my wife to go back home. And when I did, they looked at the paperwork and were like, look, this is Umrah visas, you guys have overstayed. Your visa, your student visa is not even in order now. Like you've ruined all of that. You've basically completely turned.
You're both on Umrah visa.
Yeah, I made a mistake when I went to the airport. I handed my
old passport.
I basically got nervous and handed, because at that time the mahram thing was really strict, and I handed my Umrah visa as well, and then my student visa got cancelled, and so they were very nice. They never arrested me, but they made me go through some interviews in the passport office, and they made it. Basically, the decision was the passport office and the immigration was asked to make a decision. Look, you ask him to leave, or you tell me how you're going to sort out his problem, because his student visa is expired. He's here on an overstayed Umrah visa. His wife's here on an overstayed Umrah. Like, what are you going to do with it? And the brother who interviewed me in the passport office, he said, look, I can't make this decision. This has got to go right to the top. So one thing he did, Jazakallahu khairan, wallahi, he prepared a really nice case for me. He didn't prepare, he didn't write it in a negative way. He wrote it in a very, he made a mistake. He's genuinely sorry about what he did. He is, would really like to continue his studies and all of that. And it was written in a really, really nice way. And it went to one of the princes who was in charge of the Interior Ministry at that time. And he looked at it and he wrote back and said, give him just clean slate, clean it all.
I think that's one of the amazing things about the Mamlaka as well. When you're a student there and they know you're a student, you can kind of get away with a few things, can't you? You get a bit of a green light sometimes, going on Hajj, you get a green light through that one, you get a lot of green lights. And especially when there's kind of, and this is something that Islam has, and it's part of Islam as well, I think people don't realise. Some people say, that's what's it, wasat? It's not, it's a shafa'ah.
Yeah, shafa'ah hasana.
Shafa'ah hasana, that's what it is. It's a shafa'ah hasana. He's in a position to be able to do it. He does it. He gets rewarded for it. You continue to benefit. Imagine he didn't do that. You dropped out after 2 years.
Allah understand. But لو استقبلت من أمري ما استدبرت. If the chance came again, I wouldn't have done it like that. It was a wrong way. It was a wrong way of doing things.
I think everyone was doing it like that at that time.
At that time, the university was not giving. I mean, I was at a time where the university were taking legitimate, like a royal order or command to issue a visa, and the university was ripping it and putting it in the bin. And there were statements like, we have our umara and you have yours. So
they got their own nizam. They weren't.
It was a time where it was really, really tough to bring spouses, and I didn't think it was a good idea. It wasn't a good example of being a good husband to get married and then leave your wife for 6 years. It wasn't what I wanted to do. So it was a bit of a, sort of a pivotal moment for me. But alhamdulillah, it all worked out well.
I think that's something which is really important, and I always mention to the students as well, that you're applying for the Jamia, okay, you're 21, whatever your age is, 19, 20. It doesn't mean that you don't do anything else with your life apart from study. You can be married. If you are going to get married while you're waiting, don't wait and see if you get accepted and then get married. Carry on with your life, get married. And then, inshallah, you'll facilitate how do you bring your wife. It will work out in the end.
No doubt. I just feel like if getting married for most people in this day and age is, I mean, we say the default position in getting married is that it's mustahab. But in this day and age, for your average teenager living in the UK,
wajib.
I mean, it's as close to wajib as you can get.
On that note, I remember I was preparing a talk for a masjid that I was going to give a talk at. And on the way there, as I always do, I look up fatwa and stuff like that. We know that, like you said, the default position. And I was listening to an audio by Sheikh bin Baz when he says that for young people that's able to get married, it's wajib, and he mentioned the hadith, man istata'a minkum al-ba'a falyatazawwaju. And he says, fi'l amr. So he was of the view that if you're young and you have the ability, it's wajib for you to get married. On that audio at least. I don't know if he changed it afterwards. And in the time we live in, it's obviously a very strong case for that.
No doubt. The time we live in is I mean, it's very, very hard to imagine someone going through their teenage years into their early 20s and keeping their religion safe and coming out with, you know, al-afaf, you know, being free from all of this kind of immorality. And it's a really, really tough situation. And I think that in that situation, as parents need to realize the reality of the environment their kids are growing up in and facilitate for them. And Islam provides so much ease, you know, like, for example, okay, maybe, you know, your son is not at an age where he maybe can live together with his wife, but maybe even starting for him to look even a nikah early on, you know, and he's maybe getting maturing a little bit. The difficulty I think we have is that our kids in terms of relationships are very mature, but in terms of maybe maturity other than that, in terms of making sensible decisions, are often very immature. So we have a real problem of a generation of young people who can be really far, you know, sort of in terms of their maturity, in terms of their, if you look back, let's say look back 50, 60, 70 years at what would be expected of a 15, 16-year-old in terms of the decisions they would make and the resilience they would have. And now look at the exposure to immorality that our kids have. And you're talking about, you know, a generation of people that are exposed to massive amounts of immorality, massive amounts of desires, but actually are way less resilient and less mature than
back 50,
you know, 50 years ago.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think that's a fair statement to make. And I think that creates a real problem, because you're like, look, you know, you can't handle being married other than the physical aspects of it. You actually can't, like, the actual maturity of being married and looking after a spouse. But at the same time, there's a need. So it's really
challenging.
Tricky. But that's why you've got to use the fiqh that exists within Islam and the taysir that exists to figure out a way for your kids. But at least when your teenage kids come to you and say, I want to get married, the last thing you can do is tell them, get lost, we'll talk about it in 10 years' time when you finish your degree. That's not the one at all. Worst answer.
You're in the Jamia, you're living in the Jamia, I'm assuming, in the dorms initially.
For my first year.
For your first year.
Yeah.
In Ma'had al-Lugha. 2 years, and then what kuliya did you pick, and how did you navigate between studying, family life? You've got kids at this time.
Yeah, I had my son Abdurrahman. It was sort of after the first year, so so my first child came with us to Medina. So he was with us in Medina from that after, so that first year that I was away, and then Abdurrahman was born. So the first
So you was a family man.
And
money, how did you do it with money as well?
I think things were a lot cheaper back then. Saudi was a lot cheaper, and I used to work in the summer. Just, you know, menial jobs, nothing exciting, you know, just a job that I could walk in and walk out from 3 months later. Nothing, not in my actual profession, which is IT, not in that whole thing, but just literally whatever I could do for the 3 months just to get enough money to manage the following year. And I didn't find the money aspect that difficult, because with the uni support, which was fine for a single person, not really enough for a family, but with 3 months of working in the UK in the summer, you know, that sort of, even if it's £3,000 or whatever, but that would pay the rent for the coming
year,
like the coming year, basically. So generally speaking, financially wasn't that big of a concern, but balancing study was really hard. And that's why, and now I'm going to contradict myself and say that for a student, you know, if there's a brother who's gone to the university or who is serious about talabul ilm, if they could hold off from getting married, even just a couple of years to get themselves grounded, it would be better for their studies. It definitely affects your studies, no doubt. And there's, as much as we talk about support from family, and I had, you know, I couldn't ask for more support from family and help in talabul ilm and everything. there's no doubt your kids, your family, it takes away from your time.
Your time, yeah.
But it just was, when it works out like that, قَدَّرَ اللَّهُ وَمَا شَاءَ فَعَلَ, that's what Allah decreed, and you have to just try and make it work.
Yeah.
And I think my studies definitely suffered, definitely. As I started having more kids, and it suffered, but it suffered in something that I believe is an important part of a person's life, and something that I wanted to do and probably had to do.
Yeah.
And, at the end of the day, you just have to do the best you can and ask Allah to make up for the rest. It definitely impacted me. It particularly impacted me when one of my kids was not so well over in Saudi for a while. Nothing serious, but it was sort of like 6 months of not really knowing what was wrong with them.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of
concern and
the way the university worked at that time, there was no defer. You could not defer. They would not allow you to defer. You defer, you don't come.
You're not coming back. Yeah, that was always a thing. You deferred, you're not coming back. Now you can defer like 10 times or something.
Yeah, definitely. And then also on top of that, the fact that the way the university works with, if you don't attend a class in that semester, you fail.
Yeah.
And that's like, it's not like you can you retake that class. Like you're written as 0, even though you I couldn't attend the class. I was commitments. My kid was in the hospital, and once you start down that road, it's just like, you see your grade point average gets affected, your options going forward are affected. So yeah, it's quite tricky like that. But again, I just think if that's a situation that Allah has decreed for a person, you have to find a rida ba'd al-qada. You have to be content with what Allah has decreed for you, and you just have to make the best of it.
Yeah, that's really important. That's really important. Contentment in whatever your situation and circumstances at all times is key.
Yeah, definitely.
That's a key feature, or key part of Iman. So did you do 2 years in the Ma'had, or did you do an extra year because of difficulties?
I did 2 years.
I did 2
Ma'had
years.
was relatively smooth for me.
Yeah.
It was relatively okay. I did have those visa difficulties, but it didn't really impact my study that much.
Yeah.
So I actually did 2 years in the Ma'had, went into Kulliyatul Hadith.
Hadith. Another Hadith student.
Yeah.
Alhamdulillah, we're getting there. The numbers are going up. More Hadith students. We need them.
It was, to me, to be honest, I'm not very. I was a lot less fanatical about which kulliyah to go to than a lot of students at that time.
Yeah.
There was a lot of very heated debates and a lot of quite foolish things said by people about why you should choose. But I really wanted to choose one that I was passionate about. And I chose Kulliyatul Hadith for 2 reasons. I was really passionate about Hadith. It really interested me. And I also saw that the students generally, the average student in the kulliyah, was generally someone who was committed to studying and quite serious. Whereas in other kulliyat, there were a mix of maybe more serious students and less people who were kind of not really bothered about study at all. A lot. Whereas Hadith tended to be a lot of students who generally, almost you could say if the class had 20 people in it, 19 of them were proper serious students. And I would honestly be honest and say that if I had 20 people in my class, 19 of them were more knowledgeable than me. So that really motivated me. I wanted to be in a place where I looked around and these guys were memorizing. One guy's memorizing Bukhari on the side and with the Asani, and the other one is, onto his alfiyat. He's memorizing thousands of lines of poetry, and I'm sat there with very basic level. But that motivated me and made me want to be better. So that was one of the reasons why I saw that it was the environment was the right kind of place I wanted to be.
Yeah, I think just so that people don't get disheartened, that's common in the kulliyah. You're there with, like you said, students that have come with a foundation. They've already done all the basics anyway, so they're there almost like for top ups. Where for us, we're going there to get the basics.
Yeah, definitely.
And there's another important statement of Imam Ahmad that I came across when I was on this course I'm teaching recently, that he was asked one of his students asked who should they go to for knowledge after him, and he mentioned somebody, and they said, well, he's not the most knowledgeable person, and he said it's not because of kathratul ilm, but it's tawfiq from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that he gets a sawab because of his ikhlas. So there's other aspects which isn't always about the amount of knowledge the person has, but the ikhlas in the knowledge that they have, they're given the tawfiq, and that's really what counts a lot. A couple of questions, I've got loads, but one, for someone you went there, I'm assuming you had 0 Arabic or very basic.
Yeah, that was it.
Yeah,
as close to 0 as
close to 0 as possible. What were the challenges that you would say to give advice to someone that's going to start that. The second question is, Kulliyat al-Hadith, it was known as one of the most hardest faculties in terms of, like you said, the amount of memorization, the level of knowledge there. What kulliyah would you advise new students to go to that are starting now? That's the second question. The third one, what were the influential teachers that you had that had an impact on you, that really made you kind of, name a couple, and the incidents that had an impact for you?
So I think in terms of which kulliyah, I honestly believe that a person should go for what they are passionate about and which one fits them. I don't think there's a one kulliyah fits all type of thing. But I also think that everyone should realize that every single kulliyah is massively deficient in terms of what you're supposed to have as a talib ilm. If I talk now about a well-rounded talib ilm, I would say a well-rounded talib ilm is someone who should have a good grounding in every Islamic science. They should be someone who is competent, not necessarily specialized, but competent to talk about everything from usul al-fiqh to tafsir to mustalah al-hadith to seerah. They should be someone who is competent, not specialized, but just have a good grounding in all of those sciences. And I can't think of any kulliyah that would give you that in any university. So you need to realize that whatever kulliyah you're going to go to, you are going to fall way short of the mark. So you're going to have to catch up. So the question is, which one do you want? Do you want to have handed to you on a plate, and which one do you want to catch up? So for me, I was quite for example, now there's certain things that I'm trying to catch up from other kulliyat that I found somewhat easier. Like, for example, getting into the qira'at, for example, I find that is not that difficult outside of the faculty. Whereas maybe things like perhaps ulum al-hadith, maybe even usul al-fiqh, are things that might be a little bit more tricky, and maybe it's easier to get it given to you on a plate, and there's all your mustalah al-hadith up to a point, and then after that, now you can go and catch up on, certainly aqeedah is relatively easy to get outside of the university. And I think certain other things as well, Quran and things like that. And then it's up to what a person just wants to spend 4 years specializing in. And the kulliyat now have become hyper specialized, and which is something I don't personally think is a great thing. I would much rather the original idea of having a kulliyah to sharia, and just having people go and become well-rounded students in everything, and let them specialize in masters, in doctorate, and so on. But it is how it is. So people just have to choose the one that's best for them and work really hard to catch up on the other things. Because if I look at Kulliyat al-Hadith, I mean, I think our study of Hadith was way short of what I would want a graduate of Hadith to study, let alone if I talk about usul al-fiqh. I mean, it doesn't even, it's literally nothing. Although it was better in the past.
I mean, that's something that I think we all realize when we finish the kulliyah, is that the seeking knowledge begins now.
Yeah, definitely.
Do you know what I mean?
Definitely.
It's like it begins now. Now, hold on a minute. Now I'm seeking knowledge. Now I'm seeking. Now you've got the proper tools to be able to do it.
Definitely. So it's just about what you're committed to, what you can commit yourself to for that period of time. Forgive me, I went on a slide time. You have to remind me what you.
The other question was for students that are going there with zero Arabic language. So, for example, yourself,
So I think. Maybe I'm not sure if I'm the right person to advise on this, because I actually don't find languages very difficult. So I didn't really find it very hard. I really enjoyed the Arabic language course, and I found it actually really enjoyable and reasonably easy to do.
So the fact that it was you were listening in zero, but they're only speaking Arabic in the class. They're speaking Arabic. You're trying to read, understand.
Yeah, but I think for now, what I would say, just as an Arabic teacher now, who tries to teach people Arabic who's struggling, and I've made a real effort to focus on students who are struggling. I think a student who's doing really well with Madinah books, go for it, But I've tried to focus on catching all those people who dropped out.
You've got a special program for that, haven't you, as well, on AMAU?
And I tried to focus on students who didn't manage with the other stuff. I think some people are saying, like, you're trying to erase all those other courses, and I'm trying to catch all the students who don't do well in all those other courses and help them out. So I would say the first thing is that learning a language, you're not going to make an omelette unless you break some eggs. So get used to speaking, get used to making mistakes, get used to trying, get used to not knowing what to say next, and become comfortable with the fact that you're learning a language. You're going to say things wrong. You're going to forget words. You're going to sometimes sit there and think, I've got no idea what this person is talking about. Just start to become comfortable with that. I would advise not to go too far or too grammar centric. And I keep saying this, and I must have said it 100 times on different podcasts and interviews, and that don't overload yourself with Arabic grammar, because sometimes when you overload yourself, you come out with really, really good grammar. You can't string a sentence together. You don't have any vocabulary. You don't feel confident speaking to anybody, and all you have is just really, really detailed knowledge of Arabic grammar. So you can put a dhamma and a kasra, a fatha on the end of any word in the Arabic language, but what the actual word means might even not be there. So I think that focusing on building your vocabulary, taking grammar step by step, and just taking what you need to be able to speak, and realizing that there's a difference between people who learn Arabic as a second language and people who are looking to develop the quality of their Arabic as an Arabic speaker. So if you're looking to develop the quality of your Arabic, that's where, these books we have in the background, you're looking at like books of Nahu and Sarf. That's where you're looking if you are now an Arabic speaker trying to polish your language. But I think it's fundamentally a mistake for a person to try to acquire a language like that. Like, for example, I'm going to learn to speak Arabic from zero with Al-Ajurumiyya. I don't think that's going to work.
No, it's not going to work at all.
And I think there's a lot of the books that we have for Arabic are very grammar centric, are very much like, illustrated version of Al-Ajurumiyya. So we need something a little bit more like how you would learn French or Spanish or whatever. You would learn it in a more vocabulary centric way, stories and books, and just learning the language. When you've got a certain amount, then it makes sense to go into the grammar and polish it off and things. I find that works. Again, if grammar centric learning is working for you, don't stop. Whatever you do, don't stop doing it. Just keep going. Learning, if it's working for you, it's working for you. But for a lot of people, that's the problem. The problem is we're teaching Arabic to them the way that we would teach an Arab, instead of teaching them the way that we would teach someone, for example, French or Spanish or whatever, where they're just learning in a very easy, word by word, putting a few basic sentences together. Instead, we literally, the first day they come in, it's ism wa fi'l wa harf, taqsim al-kalima, and they start looking there like, what have I signed up for?
I think we need a separate podcast for this to discuss this. We can talk about this for a very long time. I've got so much to say as well.
Allah bless you.
But I know that you're limited for time. You've got a lecture tonight and you've got another podcast, and I don't want to, I could keep you for 3 hours, but we're going to move on with another question. Influential teachers, who stands out? What incidents or moments do you remember in the faculty of Hadith? And also, on that topic as well, was there any kind of not competition between students from the West, but any friction and competition, I guess?
So in terms of the teachers, my very first teacher who taught me in the faculty of Hadith, first lesson was Shaykh Abdul al-Badr.
MashaAllah, alhamdulillah.
And Shaykh Abdul Razak, hafidhullah ta'ala, wallahi, I think is someone who had a profound impact on me. And not in terms of just knowledge, but I think if I was to say in terms of mannerisms, in terms of the way of dealing with things, in terms of how to deal with what's going on in the world, I honestly think that he probably had the biggest impact on me, or one of the biggest impact out of anybody. Of course, his father, Shaykh Abdul Muhsin, I studied from, that's almost mandatory for Kulliyat al-Hadith that you go to his classes every single evening. At that time it was every evening bar Thursdays.
And Maghrib and Isha in Masjid Nabawi, in the Prophet's Masjid.
And it was, in terms of seniority, you just benefited so much from the Sheikh. But I think that Sheikh Abdul Razak, in terms of the tarbiyah side of things, and how you actually raise students, and how you polish those rough edges, and how you give da'wah and things like that he had a very profound effect on me. And being the first teacher who taught me in the kulliyah as well.
Amazing.
it was an amazing experience. And there was so many. If I talked about the science of hadith, it had. If I talk about the in terms of aqeedah, there were the teachers and yes.
What's your favorite subject? While you were there, not afterwards. Afterwards, everything changes. But while you were there, what was it?
So I think definitely aqeedah has to be aqeedah, because I honestly think that knowing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is one of the fundamental reasons we exist on this earth.
Yeah.
And when you learn who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is from authentic sources, I think that there's nothing that changes a person's life like knowing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that had definitely a profound effect upon me. The science of aqeedah. Other than that, I really did enjoy the sciences of hadith. I really did. The sciences of hadith, all of them, al-jarh wa-ta'adil, the ruwat, mustalah. That was.
You need to translate the terminology for the.
Really interesting. This idea of critiquing narrators.
Yeah.
Really, genuinely interesting science. To how the Sunnah has been preserved.
Yeah.
Because we know a lot about the Quran and its preservation, and we had that whole issue of it being preserved with tawatur. It's just so many people narrated it. There's no way it can be wrong. But the Sunnah is a bit more nuanced than that, and it's amazing to learn how the Sunnah has been preserved. So that was really interesting. Issues between the students, huge. Just
ongoing.
It's all the time. But me, I have a particular. I perhaps have been less affected by it than other people, because of the fact that I just think I have that kind of personality where I really don't look a lot at what people say about me.
Yeah.
I do tell people, look, if someone says something about me and I need to change something, let me know. Look, give me good advice. People I trust, drop me a message, say, look, Akhi, I saw your video, you did this, and I think, look, have a look at that again, 100%. But I'm not a person who really spends a lot of time worrying about what people say. And so that, I think, made it, maybe it's because I was a new Muslim, maybe it's because I was quite isolated as a new Muslim for a few years.
Yeah.
I really people could write and talk and whisper behind, and I'm also not a person who pays a lot of attention to what goes on around me either.
Yeah.
So
that's what I was going to add. You're also not seeking out what are people saying about other people either.
Yeah, so I could honestly say I'm right, and the only thing you're going to get out of it is a sore hand, to be honest, because I'm not gonna pay any attention to it at all. Yeah. And I actually sought advice from some of the mashaykh, and I said, look, there's friction between some of the students, and what should I do? I said, your job is you're a student, just focus on your study hard, learn what's right and wrong from your mashaykh, and just try to ignore what goes on between the aqran, between just people in the same class together, and all those things. And I tried to implement that for as much as I could. I tried to be someone who focuses on da'wah, removing ignorance from myself and other people, and trying not to be overly worried about what people say. And I think also to realize that the nature of da'wah is, we always taught, right? When we learn, usul thalatha, from the very beginning, we're taught that you're going to get adha, you're going to get some harm. People are going to talk. There's going to be some little disagreements in the faculties. Students are going to have a go at each other. There's going to be some masail come up that divide people. And that is part and parcel of da'wah. So if you want to be involved in da'wah, you have to take that as part of it. You have to be able to take some criticism. You have to understand that people are sometimes going to get, upset with you. And so for me, I'm an easygoing person, but I'm not someone who's ever been really worried about that whole aspect. But it's between the students, they're always, and I think also a lot of it comes, to be honest, it comes from generally like the whole lot of us not having a lot of knowledge, to be quite honest with you. So you've got you've got the danger of nisf alim, what do you do with half a scholar? Well, not even half a scholar, what do you do with 1%? But the idea of having someone who knows a little bit, so we know bid'ah is wrong, and we know that you should follow the sunnah and the way of the salaf, and we know but we only know that's about the limit of what we know. And then between each other, of course, we're going to get into all kinds of issues with each other, because to be honest, that's why the longer you see people sitting with the mashaykh and learning with them, the more they tend to grow out of that phase, because they tend to realize that, what it is, that this is just came from a lot of just ignorance and not really not really being good, strong students of knowledge. And people would say, even the sort of the effect of studying from the mashaykh and whatever. But for me, I think that a well-grounded student can handle if their teacher has a particular male inclination towards something.
Yeah.
A well-grounded student can handle that. They can be mature enough to say, yeah, I know my sheikh has this particular issue with another sheikh, and I understand that, and I can handle that in a mature, sort of academic, reasonable way. But I think if you're just, in your first days of studying, every time one sheikh writes about another sheikh, you just get worked up about it, and you start taking sides and you start giving fatwa.
And holding people up to account for the right side or the wrong side and all that
no
stuff.
doubt. And to be honest, people, later on you realize that, to be honest, if you were to ask, 50 students who got involved in that issue, 49 of them couldn't even describe the mas'ala to you to begin with. They couldn't even, they have no tasawwur of it at all. They don't know it from beginning to end. They don't know the evidence for it. They don't know where it came from. They don't know the severity of it. They don't know the rulings that come out of it, but they just got involved in something. So those issues were there. But I think, alhamdulillah, also I feel like that is, in some ways, is improving in some ways. And the students generally are, the caliber of students is we had amazing students in the Jamiat before, we did. But I feel like now I'm so happy to see students going there and getting on with studying. And, people memorizing, pages and pages and pages of poetry, of mutun, and just being really strong students and coming back and benefiting people and benefiting from their teachers and passing that benefit on to other people.
Leading into coming back, you graduated in 2011. Two questions. One of them is, what's your Aqidah, being the topic that you really like and loved, what's your book recommendation? What's your favourite book that you'd recommend to a student of knowledge in the UK to study as a teacher? And what's your favourite book that you yourself enjoyed and got pleasure in reading, for example, in that topic?
So on that topic, I would say enjoyable, I think Fiqh al-Asma' al-Husna by Shaykh Abdul Badr. I think that is a book that you can just get lost in it, in terms of the names and attributes of Allah and how we understand them and how we implement them and what they mean. It's very, very enjoyable. I think for a student of knowledge, I would say that there are probably 2 or 3 books that you really have to be really familiar with. I think one of them has to be Kitab al-Tawheed. You really need to know that book inside out, and you need to know the masail around it and the situations that you're going to face, because ultimately that's Ra's al-Mal for you. That's your capital. If you lose that Tawheed al-Ibadah, to be honest, you lost Islam. And so that, for me, a student has to be really, really deeply understand Kitab al-Tawheed. And I would say Al-Aqidah Tahawiyah. If a student can understand that really well for Aqidah Amma in general, for the general, Aqidah, and a person really studies it very, very well, I think that person could do, could really be really well grounded. After that, there are the larger books, the smaller books, the books of Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah, rahimahullah ta'ala, no doubt, all of that. But I think if I was to say just 2 books that I think that no student of knowledge in Aqidah can afford to miss out anything from them, I would definitely say Kitab al-Tawheed and Al-Aqidah Tahawiyah.
Amazing. So you've come back to did you come straight back to the UK?
No, I spent a year in Riyadh. I spent not quite a year, perhaps it was a little bit less, but almost a year I spent in Riyadh. I wanted to go and do a master's there. The plan was to work and do the master's at the same time. Qaddar Allahu ma sha fa'al, it didn't quite work out the way I wanted it to, and I ended up coming back. I just, with family and work, and I didn't find a way to make it work. But my plan was to go over there and do a master's in Riyadh.
How was Riyadh compared to Medina? And then when you came back, did you come back to Newcastle? Did you come back to London? Did you?
No, I came back to Newcastle. But, Riyadh was very different. First of all, it's absolutely huge. And in Medina, you're used to being able to reach any sheikh, like wherever they are. Riyadh, like there's some places like that sheikhs may as well be in a different country. But the seniority of the mashaykh in Riyadh is obviously, you get very, very senior mashaykh there as well. Obviously, you get very senior mashaykh in Medina, but there's a huge number of very, very senior scholars in Riyadh, which was amazing to be able to spend some time with them and to study from them was very, very beneficial. And I think that, that really helped after the Jamia to actually go and sit with some really senior mashaykh and just to be able to benefit from them and to kind of calibrate with all that.
Do you want to mention some of them or?
So I think our mashaykh in general that we know who were in Riyadh at the time, Sheikh Salih al-Sheikh, Sheikh Salih al-Fawzan.
Inshallah, you got to meet Sheikh Salih al-Sheikh as well.
I've actually met, I was blessed to actually meet both of them.
Amazing.
And wallahi, it really, really benefited. And also the different aspect, I think Medina, there was a lot of emphasis on, there was a lot of aqidah being taught around the masajid and everything. There was also hadith there being taught a lot. Riyadh, you go there's a lot of fiqh and usul al-fiqh being taught. And that was a breath of fresh air for me because that was in Medina, but I wasn't taking advantage of it. So to go to Riyadh and to have really deep, strong lessons in usul al-fiqh and in fiqh, and in al-furu' al-fiqhiyya and things like that, the branches of fiqh, it was very helpful. Very helpful.
Amazing. When you came back to the UK, how did you get involved in dawah? Because different graduates have different experiences. Some come back, they're trying to get involved in dawah, they try to go to masajid, it's a bit closed because they've already got an imam, and they're pumped up, they want to, but it's not facilitated, so they end up making hijrah, going back and teaching English in a Muslim country, just so that they can have a better standard of living for their family.
So I think
what was your experience?
For me, the first thing that was different for me is that I had been involved in some kind of da'wah since pretty much almost before the university. And I mean very, very simple things, but we had masajid that had no khatib. We had like a musalla in the university that didn't have a khatib. So I was given khutbahs and things like that from a pretty early stage of just taking the khutbah of a sheikh and just basically reading it out, because we just didn't have anybody. So I kind of, especially we mentioned Abu Tayyib and the brothers there, and the fact that they had got me involved in what they were doing for quite a long time. So I was kind of coming back and able to do not a huge amount, but something with them. So for me, I felt like coming back to the UK, it was more a case of ramping up what was already there in terms of there were da'wah opportunities. I was already, giving little reminders. I was already, during the days of the Jamia, I was already, giving a khutbah here and there. And it was just a case of actually, trying to just do a bit more. And I got some it's best to get some really good opportunities. People who knew me said to me, look, come to our masjid and give a talk. And, from there, I think that coincided with a massive increase in sort of YouTube and all that type of stuff, sort of people starting to post, get lots of videos online. And that sort of helped a lot for the da'wah. But for me, I've always been focused on, it's actually almost, there's almost 2 or 3 completely different areas for me. One is definitely local, and making sure that, and I say this knowing how many shortcomings there are, but trying to provide something for in terms of Newcastle, even if it's sometimes the people in Newcastle will say, look, subhanallah, we see you on YouTube, we don't see you in person. But trying to be more of and that's more of just being a regular, kind of like a regular imam, just being someone that people come and are like, can you help me with this issue with my son at school? And just being there with people locally in Newcastle, that's important to me. The wider da'wah, the thing that's the idea of sort of teaching and lecturing and things like that, that took time. I mean, I ended up going to Dubai. I spent 2 years in the UK. I went over to Dubai because I just felt like I wasn't really finding my feet in terms of giving da'wah. But alhamdulillah, I got into it and things were much better. I went to Dubai because I got a really good opportunity to go there and teach new Muslims. And that's another aspect that I was very focused on. And I just felt it was like the next stage for me in terms of training. So there was a chance to sit with mashaykh in the Emirat in Saudi. There was also a chance to actually practice teaching new Muslims on a full-time basis. And then now I'm sort of like between, if you like, three things. You've got the new Muslim side, AMAU, which is where I'm teaching day in, day out. And that's all about the, you know, sort of formal study of Islam from beginning to as far as we can take you. And then there is the whole issue of the local stuff, you know, just keep coming back to Newcastle, even if it's only a few months a year, and just being there for people in the masjid, you know.
In Newcastle, where can people find you when you're there?
So actually in Gateshead, Newcastle and Gateshead are basically just a river between the two of them. So they're the same city, there's just north of the river and south of the river. So I'm actually in Gateshead in a masjid called Masjid al-Furqan in Gateshead. And that's my kind of, if you like, local masjid where I'll go and lead the salah and just generally be around for the people in the masjid. And so it's a really, really nice community.
Alhamdulillah, you've got a lot of content on YouTube, a lot of videos, which is great. Two questions. I remember, I think when the first content I saw of yours on YouTube was all around Ruqya. I think you kind of did a lot on Ruqya and people were, I guess, contacting you for Ruqya. How was that experience? That's one thing. The second question is, what would you say to students who they're reluctant to kind of put themselves out there on YouTube or social media, not because they don't, you know, want to be, they don't want to teach. They want to teach, but they don't think that, for whatever reason, I don't know. I'm not going to give them reasons. They can give their own reasons.
So I think to take the second question first, I think there's a great benefit in delaying you becoming known as a speaker. I think the more you can actually delay that with a reasonable excuse for it, the better you'll be. So what I mean by that is if your local community is crying out for a teacher and you're not teaching, that's, for me, is blameworthy. But if you can manage to delay a little bit of the whole YouTube and spreading it out to everybody, I think that's a good thing. I think that a person can take some time to settle in their knowledge, take some time to go through this sort of marhalat al-tahrir, the stage of just developing your own views on things and becoming more solid in how you present your evidences. I think it was, for me, it was way too early. Even now it's too, but it was 5 years, no doubt. It was 5 years too early for me. And that's me being very kind on myself. And so, but I think that can't be ultimately, if this responsibility is fard kifaya and people are not doing it, someone has to step up and do it ultimately. But do we, you know, can someone maybe step away from YouTube for a while to focus more on their local da'wah and then build themselves up? Yeah, but once you realize that your classes are of benefit and you're where you want to be, ultimately better to share it with people and get the benefit out to more people than just to keep it to a limited number of people. But I think there is a benefit in delaying that for a little bit of time. In terms of so what that was, you have to remind me.
The other thing was your a lot of focus was on Ruqya and Jinn.
Ruqya.
What Jinn stories have you got for the?
So no, I'm terrible at Jinn stories.
Yeah, but everybody loves those. Those are the kind of the hype ones, isn't it? Jinn stories.
I think the first qualification for Raqi should be not liking Jinn stories. We should add that to Sifat al-Raqi, and what the qualities required in a Raqi is that you're not really particularly interested in Jinn stories. I got involved in it. One of our mashaykh in Madinah, Sheikh Ali Tuwaijiri, you know, Hafidhullah Ta'ala, he really helped me a lot to get involved into it. He wrote a very beautiful book called Al-Istishfa bil-Quran al-Kareem. And he helped me to get involved.
He did that topic here as well, didn't he? We've got him on the YouTube channel. Yeah, amazing.
Really, he helped me so much. He gave me an early copy of the book before it was published.
Istishfa is to seek cure with the Quran.
Seeking a cure with the noble Quran. And he just helped me so much. I phoned him probably daily and he just talked me through it. And to be honest, I really believe it's a really good way of sharing and helping people, not just helping people in terms of helping people with their affliction, but actually helping people to come to Tawheed and to come to the Sunnah. So for me, it's a big passion. But where I changed a little bit is I went from just having little videos all over the place to actually having a proper course. So it's on the Teachable platform. Someone just search for Muhammad Tim Teachable, Ruqya, or whatever, it'll come up. But actually having a proper course where I try to keep it up to date. I'm pretty useless at that, but trying my best to keep things up to date and to try to just give people more depth and more sort of hands-on information as opposed to just a YouTube video.
So it's still there then? It's on a Teachable platform?
Yeah, it's on Teachable
Ruqya, Muhammad Humble. Okay,
so basically it was started off as an 11-week course, and I just keep adding things in, and content and little videos, and try to gather people's questions and bring them all together. Right now I'm kind of looking to revamp it and do it again to sort of give it a bit of a revamp and try and bring more information and get the evidence. I'm really focused on the evidences. I think so much of Ruqya is just stories and like really focused on, and that's Sheikh Ali really helped me with that, focusing yourself on the dalil. What's the evidence for what you're doing? You're reading on the person like this. What's your evidence for doing that? Otherwise, everyone has, I tried it, I read this, I wrote this, I hung this on the wall, but evidence-based is really important.
Inshallah, we'll get you down for a workshop at the college on this topic.
It would be lovely to do it.
If you can summarize some of that and benefit the students here, I'm telling you, you'll have a packed house, inshallah.
I'd love to do it.
So we're going to get that.
Allah bless you.
Barakallahu feekum, jazakallahu khairan. And so that's how you got into, and the book is it translated, the book, or not yet?
I've translated the book.
Translated it?
I've translated it, and I've done like videos on it, and I've like, but I've never actually published it. But it's available. Copies go out to people.
Okay, brilliant. Maybe we'll try to get a copy, put in the link below, and we'll put a link for the website as well for that as well. That'd be brilliant. So you're now between three places giving dawah. You're in Dubai doing it with the new Muslims. Is that with Kalima or is that with both? Just generally
in Dubai, I'm with AMAU most of the time, but I'm sometimes doing some work with Dubai government and Awqaf and things like that, Dar al-Bir and people like that, specifically on the new Muslim thing. Because we get 3,000 to 5,000 people accept Islam every year in Dubai. So that's the official statistics. So large numbers of new Muslims.
Yeah, it's huge.
That's what I'm doing. Obviously, I'm in Dubai primarily with AMAU. Which is obviously an online project, so people can access it from anywhere. And then a few months a year back in Newcastle.
Inshallah, we're going to see you once from Newcastle to London. Inshallah, and hopefully it won't be such a long flight.
Inshallah ta'ala.
Okay, Ramadan's around the corner. Give some advice to our audience, inshallah, as it pertains to this video. Hopefully will go out in Ramadan sometime, whether it's at the beginning or middle, inshallah. What advice do you give them 10 days into Ramadan? What advice do you give to this?
I think I'll try and limit the advice to just a few really simple points. I think first of all, what is the purpose of Ramadan? يا أيها الذين آمنوا كتب عليكم الصيام كما كتب على الذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون. So Allah made the purpose of Ramadan developing taqwa. So Ramadan's like a madrasa, it's like a school, and it teaches you all the things that you need to be able to become closer to Allah and to have more taqwa. And I think you've got to judge the success of your Ramadan based on that overriding purpose and look at yourself and are you getting closer to Allah? Are you leaving more of the haram? And is it going to be a permanent change or not? So you look at those things. I think it's really important for a person to realize whatever days have gone from Ramadan, there still remains days in Ramadan for you to take advantage of, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. And even if there was one day left, if you can make that one day a really, really good day and a day that is accepted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then even if the rest of the days were not as good as they should have been, then we hope that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will put barakah in it. And for a person not to lose opportunity, you don't know what will happen tomorrow and you don't know what's going to come around again. And it might be that you don't get another Laylatul Qadr. It might be that you don't get another Ramadan. It might be you don't get another fast. And so a person just take advantage of what is left and realize that Ramadan is not just about holding back from food and drink and what breaks the fast, but also holding back from the things that reduce from it and take away from its reward and the things that displease Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So I hope that that's just some general words of advice.
Do you know what? I think I've done quite a few in the Maktabas, and this has to be one of my I think one of the best ones.
Allah
I'll
bless
be honest
you.
with you.
Allah
Barakallahu
bless
fikum,
you.
jazakallah
Allah
khair.
bless you.
It's been
Barakallahu
very
fikum.
nice, and
Jazakallah
I've
khair
taken
for
all your time. I know
inviting
you're
me.
very, very busy.
Allah bless you.
And inshallah, hopefully it's not the last time you're going to be at the college. Well, I'm looking forward to the workshop, inshallah. I'm going to hold you to that on the next trip.
I'm looking forward to it.
Okay,
as
so
well.
book it
Allah
now,
bless
because I
you.
know you're
I'm
very
looking
hard
forward
to.
Allah-
Communication is not the easiest.
Allah bless you. We try our best. Wallah. And fall short in a lot.
Jazakallah khair.
Allah
Thank you very
bless you,
much for
Habib.
coming.
Barakallahu
May Allah
feek.
reward you.
Jazakallah
Jazakallah khair
khairan.
for taking your time.
Allah
Barakallahu
bless
feekum.
you.
Jazakallah khair.
Barakallah.
That's it for today, inshallah. Until the next episode of In the Maktaba. Barakallahu feekum. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.